I present to you the greatest revenge of all time. Our story today begins with our desperate protagonist fleeing through the forest. And even as he falls from the top of the mountain, he cannot escape his pursuers. One of them calls our protagonist Prince Cheon Yo-woon and congratulates him, as he had been running for over an hour and they only just now managed to capture the lad. The boy tries to argue, saying he did everything they asked, even gave up the academy, so why do they still threaten his life? They say that even though he is a commoner, he still has the slightest claim to the throne. As long as he's alive he'll have rights, and they can't let him live. The leader of the ninjas says that if the protagonist surrenders, he'll have a painless death, but the boy refuses, saying he'd rather fight to the end. I like this guy's spirit. The ninjas move to finish their mission of eliminating the protagonist, who tries to resist and fight in some way, but he can't. Caught by the neck, the ninja still jokes, asking if that's all he's got. At that moment, the secret blade shocks them all. How could this untrained commoner, without skills, manage to hold a sword and resist like this? They soon realize that if he had training like the others, he would be a great threat to the royal family, so they say he must die tonight regardless. The protagonist didn't even see the knee that probably broke all his teeth. No, it's all here. A ninja makes a fatal wound on the boy. The scream was so loud it woke up the entire forest. For eliminating one of their own, he steps on the wound before finishing the job. As they were about to deliver the final blow, a bright light shines and whoever was about to strike is disintegrated. From 3 different angles, they realize who must be responsible and point to a stylish, futuristic teenager. At the sign of another attack, the bright light dazzles again, and they're all disintegrated in the blink of an eye. The last ninja knows that such ability is not normal, so he flees, leaving his mission behind. But with just a raise of the hand, he's eliminated while still in the air. Accepting that his life was already over, he at least feels happy to see that they got what they deserved, closing his eyes and waiting for death to come. The futuristic teenager, not at all sad, says he's out of time and asks his ancestor to make his life good in the future. After the mysterious injection, he hears a robotic voice in his head and the protagonist faints. The mysterious youth disappears forever. Long ago, waking up the next day with dark spots all over his body, he realizes his body is covered in dark spots. He hears a voice in his head asking if the master has finally awakened. The protagonist, not understanding, asks who's speaking in his head and how is that possible. The voice says it's a nano machine. He understood nano machine instead of machine, and machine means evil god in Chinese. Now Cheon Yun thinks he's possessed by an evil god. Meanwhile, 2 elders of the demon cult walk while discussing the assassination attempt on Prince Cheon Yun. The person who found the protagonist describes the scene as a battlefield, with many disturbing things around, and there was the prince sleeping peacefully amidst that terrible scene without any injuries. They go to the room to visit the boy, who was still talking to the evil nanomachine. Prince Cheon asks if it was the nanomachine that saved him yesterday. She says it depends. If it's about eliminating the ninjas, then no, it wasn't her, as she was still in the syringe. But if it's about activating the healing process, then yes. Nanomachines are a thing of the future. Explaining this to a person from the past millennium wouldn't be possible. So, the nanomachine asks if she can send the information directly from his brain. What's a brain? Never mind, yes, you can. Now, Cheon Yun understands what a nanomachine is. Meanwhile, the 2 people arrive at his room. He pretends to be asleep to avoid talking to them. Let's come back later. Now, kid, you stink. There's no way to avoid it with that smell. The doctor approaches and recognizes the boy. Cheon confirms that yes, the doctor treated his mother. Feeling his pulse, he finds something very strange. What is it, doctor? Is he going to die? Quite the opposite. His body is in great shape. He's perfect for a martial artist. These dark spots on his body are toxins being expelled. Did he take some kind of super secret special medicine? Thinking about it, the protagonist wonders if the evil god in his head is real. The demon cult was formed by several families, but only 6 core sects. Every 10 years, the demon cult's academy opens to train the best warriors of the generation. When princes join the academy, it's called the period of great battles of the heirs. The doctor doesn't find answers, so he just prescribes some tonics for further recovery. When he leaves, he wonders how someone can improve so much overnight. When the prince was young, he thought he would die due to his fragility and lack of knowledge. But now he can learn to fight and stand among the best princes and even compete against them. Cheon Yun is alive today only because his guard, Jang, protected him. Now he orders him to go take a bath, clean up, and change clothes. In the bath, he decides to test his healing ability. Using a blade, he cuts himself deeply. Before his eyes, he learns that his body can regenerate very quickly. He didn't believe the voice in his head, but now he sees that it's true. Moreover, the nanomachine has made his body incredibly powerful. Later in the library, another thing he can do now is super fast reading. He can flip through a book in 10 seconds and absorb all the content. I imagine myself at my school with this. I would be amazing. Now that the rejected prince has discovered his new infinite potential, he can now get revenge on all those who treated him badly. The first one to suffer at his hands will be the prince who sent the ninjas after him. This same boy received information that his family's ninjas failed to carry out his order to eliminate the bastard prince, tarnishing the name of the demon cult. He says he'll deal with that bastard at the academy. The next day, the protagonist was thinking that today is the day he'll join the academy. It would be good if he had already learned some combat skills before going to the academy. He watches guard Young train, then the nano machine asks if he wants an analysis of the guard's movements. He stays there for almost an hour watching the movements while analyzing. After that, the nano informs that she has finished analyzing the guard's movements. It's installed directly in his brain, and he tests it to see, and it already works 100%. No, actually, not quite. At least one thing doesn't work. He has the knowledge in his head, but the muscles aren't used to the movements of this martial art. So he has to train the muscles first, but she says he can also make changes to his body. He won't even need to train to use the technique, only it will hurt. He accepts, and it doesn't hurt that much, but when it really happens, he faints. When the prince's protector remembers that he's alone, hours in a place where there are people who want to kill him, he rushes to see how the boy is. Arriving there, all he finds is the prince passed out in bed. He also sees that the son of a bitch destroyed the room's floor. Astutely, he also realizes that these footprints are from his training movements, and that the prince is watching his training secretly, and training secretly too. It's true, guys, a lot of training indeed. Nano training. When he wakes up later with all DLCs installed, his knowledge and body are now ready for fighting techniques. He tries to use the technique again and breaks the floor once more. The next moment, the guard arrives with the boy's breakfast, who hides the broken floor with the table. He thinks the guard didn't notice. The protagonist remembers that this will be his last day with the guard, as he's going to the academy. It's been almost 5 years since his mother died, and the guard has been taking care of him since then. Then the guard removes the table and asks since when he learned his dagger technique. Prince Cheon is surprised, as in their culture taking others' techniques is forbidden, and that's what he did with the nano machine, so it's unforgivable. But instead of getting upset and judging the boy, the guard is happy. He hands over the technique manual and tells the protagonist that he only didn't teach him because traditions don't allow it. But since he learned it on his own, he did well, and he cries. Even though the boy promised in the past that he wouldn't cry anymore since his mother's death, the guard says it's okay. He can cry now in front of him, as long as he stays strong to go to the academy. Gentlemen, this guy is amazing. So, finally, the protagonist goes for the first day at the academy. The warrior who will make the speech for the new students tells everyone that this place may be the last they'll see in life, so be careful. He doesn't seem to believe in the potential of the students there, but when he looks to the front, where the 6 heirs of the demon sect are, he changes his mind and presents to us the names of the mortal rivals of our rejected prince.
Number 1, Cheon Mian from the Shadow sect. Number 2, Cheon Kyung Woon from the Sword sect. Number 3, Cheon Mu Kyung from the Spring sect. Number 4, Cheon Jang Sum from the Poison sect. Number 5, Cheon Yuchan from the Blade sect. Number 6, Cheon Wonryo from the Sound sect.
The red-haired man says that this time there's only one female candidate. What a shame. Moreover, the 7th heir isn't here. When he goes to get his ticket, the entry for the 7th son isn't on the list, so he doesn't receive the entry to go to the venue. Therefore, he has to stay at the back like everyone else who isn't important. Meanwhile, the gossip speaking ill of the prince is spreading. That's great. When he starts humiliating everyone, I want to see the look on their faces. Finally, the main event, the arrival of the Lord and his guardians to welcome the students. And for some reason, one of the Lord's guardians likes to drink a lot. So, the leader of the guardians orders them to be silent because, Your Majesty, is going to speak. This is the leader of the demonic cult, one of the top 5 strongest in all of Murin, the incredible Lord Jeonjang. When he speaks, everyone trembles in fear at his overwhelming presence. The Lord welcomes everyone, saying that everyone there is the future and pride of the cult. So, train hard, make friends, and be great soldiers for me in the future. That's all. Before leaving, he takes a look at the 7th prince, turns his back, and leaves. He's the boy's father, but still, the protagonist is a son of his castle servant, not from any of the main clans. So, Cheon Yun himself says he didn't expect anything from him. The formalities are over. The academy director begins to explain how the 4 years of the students at the academy will be. Each of them will only have one chance to pass each stage. Whoever fails some of the tests is expelled from the academy. One of the princes raises his hand, saying he has a question. The director rejects it and asks if questions were authorized. The director explains that when you enter the academy, you lose all your privileges from the 6 families here. So, if he doesn't want to be expelled on the first day, he should shut up. The princes humiliate the protagonist, but in the eyes of the academy, everyone is equal. I already like this guy too. He says the kid's question must be obvious, that one chance to pass each stage is very unfair. However, he says there are benefits you gain when you pass each stage. A black dragon sphere, the richest library in the kingdom. Each stage they pass, progress, they'll gain access to a new floor in it. This way, they can strengthen themselves at each stage. Now, everyone is excited. The rewards are great. But the person who just boosted the boys' morale throws and that the vast majority won't even make it halfway through the stages. So, to worsen everyone's morale, when you enter the academy, you lose all your privileges. And when you leave, your ranking in society will depend on the level you reached in the academy. So, whoever fails the first test can look for a job as a farmer. The first test is to sift out those who don't have potential. Anyone with little or no Nigong is screwed. Cheon-yun is in trouble. The prince made a deal in the past that he would never learn Nigong, so they wouldn't secretly kill him. Cheon-yun never learned, but still, the scoundrel here ordered him to be eliminated. The Sound clan will do the first test now, and only those who have at least some training will be able to stand for the necessary time. The test begins, and upon hearing this music, it's very intense. The weakest students started to fall. The 6 princes trained from birth with all possible resources don't even feel difficulty. But then the woman starts playing louder. For some reason, she's getting angry, and the princes begin to notice that it's becoming difficult even for them to endure. People deep down are bleeding from their ears, but the woman doesn't stop, and it gets more intense. The woman's intention is to bring down the 7th prince, whom she hates, without caring about the rest of the students falling. One of the princes wonders why this woman is playing even louder and louder. Then he looks back to see what it is. Then he realizes our beloved protagonist showing no signs of fatigue. How is this possible? He doesn't even know Nigong, or does he? Everyone starts feeling the pressure from the bad music. The old woman holds a grudge against the protagonist and will do anything for him to fail this test, so she keeps increasing the music. She crosses the line. Even the princes would fail if the director didn't intervene. He ends the exam. The nano machine that has total control over Cheon-yun's body blocks his hearing, but realizing that almost everyone nearly died here, and he, who has no kind of training, doesn't seem to have been affected by the test, would be very strange. When the test ends, he orders the nano machine to inflict internal injuries on him. As a result, he vomits a little blood to make a scene. Proud of this kid, he already passed the test deceiving everyone with intelligence. Besides, he gained the respect of the redhead when he sees that the boy doesn't have a drop of Nigong. The kid passed the test only with the strength of determination. He sends the boy to the infirmary and goes to exchange some words with the Elder of Sound. He says she went too far and failed almost everyone, besides almost killing one of the sovereign's sons. She admits she was wrong and went overboard. Then the redhead says the boy doesn't have a drop of Nigong. She says she doesn't believe it because it doesn't make sense. The director insists he checked himself. The kid endured everything in determination. The 2 guardians who don't seem to like each other face off a little, and then the redhead asks him to leave. He says he will, but it's not because he ordered, it's because the drink ran out. The princes feel something coming their way. They don't know if it's their power or the strong scent of alcohol. The drunk guardian leaves thinking the boy is amazing, endured everything without any energy, while these excited kids are hopeless. The redhead admits that he also liked the boy and that if he weren't of royal lineage, he would take him as a disciple because the kid has potential. The other princes also got hurt by the test, but no one seems to have cared about them. In the infirmary, the doctor, upon hearing that there's a patient coming, gets excited to be able to work. He asks what happened. How many stabs did he take to be bleeding like this? The guards say it's not that. They're internal injuries because he resisted the attack from the sound lady for a long time without having any Nigong. The guards leave now, but one of them takes a look at the protagonist before and says that this kid isn't as bad as minutes ago. The nano machines healed him from the inside, so he's just pretending to be injured. A drunk guard breaks the door, entering the place, leaving the doctor annoyed. But because of the hierarchy, he can't complain much. Meanwhile, the boy pretends to be injured and sleeping, but the guardian approaches and says hi. He asks until when he's going to keep pretending to be asleep. He keeps pretending to be asleep, so the guy uses magic, lifts him and says that if he doesn't stop now, he'll get slapped on the ear. Finally, the prince gives up and asks how he knew it was pretending. The drunk guy finds it funny and says it was because of the speed of his breathing. Someone who's unconscious doesn't breathe like that. The guardian says that kids nowadays are all spoiled and take the easiest path, full of whims. He says he liked the protagonist, that he has determination the other students don't have. He releases the ability he made for him to sit down. The guardian says he wants the boy as a disciple. Surprised, Cheon can't believe that one of the most powerful guys in the kingdom wants to be his master, so suspiciously, he asks if the drunk knows who he is. He says yes, he's the useless bastard son of the Lord. He disagrees with the last part, but it doesn't matter. If he does this, the other 6 noble families will be against him. The guardian says he's not in favor of him anyway, so it doesn't matter. But what will you teach me? How to drink? The man knows he grew up as a bastard son everyone wants to get rid of, so he's already suspicious of something so convenient. The boy thinks it's better not to. This is an academy. He won't lack teachers here. But then the drunk explains that things won't be easy for him here. For example, everyone who got hurt after the last exam ended wasn't sent to the infirmary, only the boy. That's because everyone else used Nigong to heal themselves. The prince who doesn't know how to do that is the only one here. In other words, if the prince doesn't learn Nigong, he won't stand a chance here. The only way he'll learn that is with 2 hours a day on the first floor of the library. Faced with all these arguments, the only thing the prince thinks about is how much he'll be able to enter that library and use the hack machine to speed run reading. But he realizes that even with the nano machine, he's at a huge disadvantage, so he accepts, yes, to be the drunk's disciple and bows before his master. Look how cool. The master says that the blood Cheon should not bow before anyone and lifts the boy using Nigong. In other words, the royal blood is the Cheon blood, so the drunk master recognizes him as a true prince. Guys, I'm going to cry. Now I won't call him drunk anymore. The right guardian pats the doctor and tells him to take care of his student well. The doctor congratulates the prince. The guy who never takes students today made a point of having the boy as his disciple. And behind the scenes, because it's forbidden to have masters from outside the academy here, but he won't tell, the doctor is a good guy. Meanwhile, on the training field, the class is cultivating. Someone tells the left guardian that a total of 415 students passed the first test. The guardian says it was 200 fewer people than in the last test 10 years ago, and that's because this year's test was very difficult. The students who didn't pass are revolted at the academy. He tells those who didn't pass and found the test very difficult that the test was difficult because of the 7th Prince Cheon. But regardless of that, accept their fate, then forcibly expels all of them from the academy. The guardian also says that this year the competition will be stronger since the level is higher due to the difficulty of the first test. Among the talents, the number 1 Prince of the Dark Clan and the number 5 Prince of the Sword Clan are the great talents of this generation. It is very likely that one of these two will be the successor to the great leader. The guardian says that from today on, groups will be formed, and the next tests will be in groups, so either everyone in the group fails or everyone passes. From today on, everyone will be trained by the tactics and techniques team. Take advantage and look at the faces of these teachers, who are all very friendly. After class, the prince who tried to kill Cheon Yun before tells the instructor that one person from his team is in the infirmary and hasn't received the news. He doesn't want his team to fail because of one guy, so he wants to give him the news to keep him informed. The instructor congratulates the prince and says he understands the meaning of the next group work test and says he will go there himself to give information to this student in the infirmary. The instructor warns that only those who are injured can go to the infirmary. Smirking maliciously, the boy says it's okay. The protagonist will undergo acupuncture treatment for 14 days. That's all to disguise. He can't heal overnight to avoid arousing suspicion because everyone knows he can't use Nigong. The instructor from Prince Cheon Yun's team went to the infirmary to talk to the boy, but his doctor didn't allow it and warned that for 14 days, he won't leave here. The next test is in 3 weeks. Until then, he will have to learn everything he needs on his own in the infirmary with his secret teacher. In the dead of night, the legendary Yasuo sneaks into the prince's room to instill Nigong within him, believing it will make him stronger. The master arrives, stating that tonight, Prince Cheon will learn what he should already know. Injecting his own energy, he clears the path for the prince's own flow to run freely. For someone who's never trained, the prince has the perfect physique, like a god of war. Could this be the influence of the Lord on the child? It wouldn't be surprising, as the only woman the Lord truly cared for was this boy's mother. That same night, fights erupted in all the dormitories to decide the leaders. A cadet beat the prince of the Poison Clan and all the other students. His name is Baek Ji, the new leader of Group 18. Back in the infirmary, after hours, the guardian finished unlocking the prince's Nigong veins. It was extremely exhausting and likely painful, but the prince insists he's fine, not feeling a thing. The guardian tells him he has 1 more week to learn to use his Nigong before leaving. Seeing how tired he is, Prince Cheon recognizes his effort and becomes even more determined. Pleased with the prince, the guardian advises him to always remember breathing and flow before departing. With these words, the prince thanks his mentor, determined to master it in a week. This marks the beginning of his journey for revenge. The next day, at the training center, the guardian divided the class into groups, assigning each prince to a different group. That night, the groups would decide their leaders. As expected, each prince became the leader of their group, showcasing their power and superiority. However, one prince didn't become a leader. His face bruised, he stood in front of his group's leader. Another prince taunts him for failing to become a leader, especially the prince our protagonist hates the most. The prince of the Poison Clan grows angry, vowing revenge later. I want to see how far this goes. I'm enjoying it. After class, the prince asks the teacher how many days until his teammate leaves the infirmary. The answer, 1 more week. Frustrated he can't attack his nemesis yet, in the dorm, he takes out his anger on everyone. One of his allies suggests that if Prince Cheon Yun won't leave the infirmary, where the injured go, they can send someone there. The doctor in the infirmary, with only Cheon Yun as a patient, suddenly receives a new patient with a sword lodged in his back. After stitching him up, he'll have to stay in the infirmary for 3 days alongside Cheon Yun. Now I get the plan. Sent during the night to injure Cheon Yun, the plan seemed right, but trying to sever his ligaments triggered the nanomachine's defense system. A surge of electricity ran through him, causing him to pass out. This noise wakes our protagonist, and seeing what just happened fills him with rage. Later, the attacker wakes up tired, confused about how he was knocked out. The calm prince tells him the sleeping beauty has finally awakened. The boy panics when Cheon Yun shows him his now shaved head, the pride of a warrior. Cheon Yun hits him to calm him down. He has more important things to do. He asserts his dominance, demanding to know who sent him. When the boy refuses to cooperate. Cheon-yun threatens to cut him if he doesn't spill everything. Finally removing his gag, the attacker claims students can harm each other outside the combat field, so he can't do anything to him. Cheon-yun promises to do something that won't leave marks for the teachers or anyone to notice. Just seeing those needles got me scared, guys. He covers his mouth again and puts it on his fingers. Only after fainting twice and having his whole hand operated on does he decide it's time to talk. However, the prince already removes his gag and says he already knows it's Prince Mujiam. How do you know? Cheon-yun says the instructor comes here every day, so he asks about what's going on outside, knows which group he's in, the Spring Clan Prince's interest in him, and his leadership of the group. At that moment, Cadet 23 called Hyobang remembers they said this guy is dead weight, but that's not what he found out today. He swears he won't tell anyone what happened today, so don't hurt him anymore. However, Cheon-yun says he needs to sleep and delivers a Nigong blow that knocks him out. As his consciousness fades, the bald guy realizes this guy does have Nigong. Yes, he's deceiving everyone. That's our protagonist, ruthless, powerful, and thirsty to surpass everyone. I'm really enjoying this story. Please leave a like on the video to show me if you guys like this guy too. The master who visits his student every night with all the excitement in the world because he's a monster, and he'll have merit in it. Arriving there, he'll take Cheon-yun's reward, the Black Dragon Sphere. At that moment, he discovers there's a body in the infirmary with him. The protagonist calmly says that's a cadet who came to the infirmary with an intentional injury to try to kill him. Unconcerned, he says he already knows who ordered it, one of the princes, and it's fine, he's used to it. The master is sad. A child shouldn't be used to this. He says he'll need friends from now on, that'll be important. But enough of that, it's time to install another hack. With this sphere he brought, the protagonist will progress more than 20 years in Nigong training. If he knows how to take advantage, they start the assimilation, and every day he's more of a monster. Soon Sung Jin won't stand a chance. Kid, what happened to your hair? Don't say anything else. I'll leave you alone. The extra was sent to eliminate the protagonist from being a competitor to the throne, and the only thing eliminated was his hair. After the bald guy left the infirmary and told the master he failed in the mission, a bad person like him humiliates the bald guy who failed. The bald guy covers his head and says that the one who tried to kill the protagonist woke up. After that, the doctor didn't leave the room. He didn't have a chance to try anything. The doctor didn't even sleep again in those 2 days he stayed there. The prince is annoyed that the doctor is so perceptive and protects the boy. Even though it seems like Cadet 23 wasn't at fault, his leader beats him and calls him an incompetent piece of trash. Finally calming down and saying he'll handle it on his own when he gets out of there. While still hitting the bald guy, Hyobang remembers how kind he was when he asked for this favor, but now he treats him like this. So he decided not to tell about the protagonist's true abilities. When the time comes, he'll find out on his own. Cheon Yeo-woon kept training in Siab Meng's martial arts, the right guardian of the cult. This time, Cheon trained a new technique, and his movements were much better than before. Meng watched the training very closely and was amazed by Cheon Yeo-woon's genius. In just a few days, Meng showed the shadow butterfly step a few times, but now Cheon can confidently demonstrate mocked him. When he tried to kick with all his force, the nanomachine's defense system activated, and he was thrown back several meters, dragging himself. He didn't understand what happened here. Could it be that Cheon-yeo's Nigong is stronger than mine? The troublesome student lying on the ground. The professor approaches and says, "Him again? The same boy who last time injured his fellow with a sword. He had to go to the infirmary." The irritated student looked at the protagonist and saw him smiling. This made him grind his teeth in anger. The professor standing in front of him asked if that expression was for him. Because of this insolence, he struck his student in the chest and said that from today, Cadet 23 for the next 4 days will have no day off. And if he has any questions, can he speak now?
Why you bully me?
At this moment, Prince Mujium and his group became a joke. The arrogant student defended by the prince was now humiliated. Prince Mujium was filled with hatred for this. Watching everyone in training, the academy director wonders if Cheon-yeo already has a higher Nigong level than that boy then? It was said that he was untalented, so maybe it's true that being the Lord's son, even if he hasn't had training, talent runs in his veins. All the prince can do now is to send disapproving looks to his brother, as he can't attack him. Later, in the weapons hall, the students are allowed to have lunch. Everyone will eat chicken and other meats. The protagonist is happy because everything tastes so good. However, his brother's hateful or irritating look bothers him. Can't he even enjoy his meal and stop it? This makes him think, why does he hate so much if they've never even seen each other? The protagonist just thinks they don't know what suffering is. None of them saw their own mother die helpless, so he can't wait to destroy them all. Later, after everyone ate, the cadets were dismissed, except for Cadet 80. He's under punishment. Content: Cheon-yeo observes that things are improving. Now, all students are heading to the library. There, his brother awaited him leaning against a pillar. And as always, he's with stronger people by his side. He's a coward. This commotion catches the attention of other people, including the princess. His sister watches from afar. The prince, now that he has an audience, begins his show. He goes up to Prince Cheon-yeo-woon and calls him a dirty blood. He says that until now, it has been easy since he was lying in the infirmary. So he asks if someone of dirty blood like him is annoyed. Cheon-yeo-woon questions if he's insulting the Lord, because calling someone who has his blood dirty is the same as saying that the Lord's blood is dirty. The protagonist ironically asks if he's so powerful that he can even insult the Lord of the cult. The situation turns against the prince of the Spring clan. His sister then says he's really dumb to do that. Farther away, the prince of the Sword clan says his brother is an idiot. Feeling humiliated, Mujium grabs him by the shirt and attacks the protagonist. However, in the blink of an eye, a punch hits his face and he falls. Cheon-yeo-woon then asks if he feels annoyed. The prince, who has never been disrespected or hurt, screams in frustration, "You worm! How dare you do this to me?" The prince then attacks his brother. Mujium hits the void. Cheon-yeo-woon easily dodges, and after getting some distance, he flees the scene. This ability to move surprises his brothers. He shouldn't be able to move like that. The prince screams for his allies to pursue. As he holds his nose, he says he can't let him live, can't even consider him human. As they chase the protagonist, they find it odd. He seems to be running just enough so they can't get close to him. After a while, the prince also catches up to his men, shouting why they haven't caught him yet. Confidently, he says he will crush every bone of Cheon-yeo-woon. After a few minutes of running, the protagonist finally stops. He asks if they're tired of running. As he prepares his attack, he shouts there's no reason to show off. The prince blocks his blow and is thrown back. He says he defended the blow using Nigong and still got pushed back. His Nigong is strong, the angry prince says. So you know martial arts. Mujium thinks it's strange. In the first test, he didn't have any Nigong at all. So what happened for him to get so strong? Cheon-yeo continues attacking his brother. When the others manage to arrive, they see the fight, which is intense. The prince also manages to retaliate and hits him in the stomach. The protagonist says he'll take a few hits and defends against others. Despite everything, his opponent is still strong, but he can still endure this battle. Quickly, he goes after the prince and almost hits him in the head. The prince then dodges and hits him directly in the face. Now confident, the prince says he's trash, doesn't even know how to retaliate. The protagonist on the ground just watches with a concerned look. The prince, mocking him, says imitating others' techniques is beyond his limit. Truly, the protagonist admits he underestimated him, recognizes that the prince has more combat experience. However, Cheon-yeo-woon closely observes his enemy when the prince attacks using one of his techniques. Using the nanomachine to analyze his movements and identify the weak point, at the right moment, he dodges and hits his opponent directly with an uppercut to the chin. The attack was so strong it could have even broken his teeth. This surprised Cheon-yeo-woon. The prince takes some distance, holding his teeth in his mouth. The protagonist now realizes he can use the nanomachine to analyze movements. The move he just used is from boxing, something the nanomachine has in its database. Angry, he now attacks, throwing several punches at once. Cheon-yeo-woon easily dodges. His enemy's movements are easy to predict. This frustrates the prince. He lands several blows blows on him. As he's beaten, the Spring Prince recalls his past with sadness. His mother said he was incompetent. Because of that woman, everything went wrong. Because of her son, who can't do anything right, everything went wrong. Now we're back to the present. Cheon Yeo-woon watches as the prince cries. He tries to attack him again. However, he's counterattacked, his head brought to the ground. The result of the battle is the complete defeat of the Spring Prince. All that's left for him is to stay on the ground, crying and bitter about his defeat. Cheon Yeo-woon says you reap what you sow. The prince's allies wonder, is that the same person they said was the weakest? Cheon Yeo-woon asks if they also want to get beaten up. Fearfully, they say no. Mujeom questions why he didn't finish the job. Cheon Yeo-woon affirms that if the next test wasn't a group one, he would have cracked his skull right there. The prince yells for him to do it. Then, don't be a coward. However, ignoring him, Cheon Yeo-woon leaves. The prince stays behind, only to savor his defeat. As he returns, the protagonist says his lack of combat experience is a problem. Stopping near a river, he asks if the nano machine has more functions he can use. It replies that so far, he has used only 3 out of the 100 functions that exist. Surprised, as he doesn't know the existing functions, he asks the nano to transfer all the knowledge about the functions to his brain. After the shock of knowledge flooding his mind, he feels great. Searching his mind for the various functions that exist, the augmented reality function can help. With this, he's able to simulate, in his visual field, a hologram of his opponent. The nano can stimulate in his vision the opponent's movements, so he can simulate realistic combat. The simulations are so good that even the prince's arrogance is in the hologram. And that's good. The protagonist's anger increases, hearing the hologram's word. They engage in combat. Cheon Yeo-woon can't hit the hologram, but the hologram can hit, and the nano machine simulates the impact on him, even the pain. So, after several hours of training, he's exhausted on the ground. Despite feeling a lot of pain, he was able to train even more. No pain can stop him from advancing in his training and changing his destiny. When he finally returns to the dormitory, everyone looks at him suspiciously. Did they know he beat the current dorm leader? Hyo-bong, the one who tried an ambush from the infirmary and now is bald, was the first to talk to Cheon Yeo-woon, saying his bed is over there. Of all the people in the dormitory, he was the only one to talk to him. So, the protagonist wonders why he changed his attitude. What does he want with this? Hyo-bong kneels and says he will bet everything on him. Cadet 23 says he wants to follow Prince Cheon Yeo-woon and for him to be his new master. Everyone around wonders if that's a vote of loyalty? Due to what happened before, Cheon Yeo-woon doubts his honesty. However, he insists he regrets his actions. In front of everyone, Hyo-bong asks him to accept him as a servant to redeem himself. With sincerity, he was betting everything on the 7th prince, as he was abandoned by all the others. After observing for a while, Cheon Yeo-woon says he accepts him like that. This response left him amazed. The bald one was even willing to kiss his feet. All of this happened in front of Prince Mujeom, who was his master until then. The prince's servant says he's an insect to do this. Hyo-bong tries not to show that he's scared, but he's very afraid of them. Watching this happen, the protagonist asks why they're calling his servant an insect, when, in fact, the insect here is you. The boy gets angry. Protagonist asks if he said something. Because of this humiliation, he attacks Cheon Yeo-woon without thinking of anything else. His blows are predictable. He just dodges and hits his neck. He fell unconscious. Compared to his hologram characters, this is nothing. In front of his new servant, the bald one thinks he made the right choice. Cheon Yeo-woon asks if the prince wants to try his luck again. He just ignores and says that nothing changed because he only has one servant. Mujeom avoided the fight, and the other students notice, and they begin to wonder if maybe that person will bring changes to the academy. A week had passed. On the training field, the instructor shouts that he has taught everything he could to the students. Now, they must be responsible for themselves. The groups that will face each other in the academy's second test will be drawn now. Each key will have 4 groups. The battles will be group against group. The academy director called the leaders to draw. He noticed that some of the leaders had already changed. The groups that will face each other are drawn. Group 1 is everyone's favorite to win. When it was Group 8's turn, he realized that Cheon Yeo-woon was the new group leader. His sister, who just found out now, thinks Mujeom is an idiot. She warned him several times to be careful. After the afternoon training, the Spring Clan Prince went to the mountains to train alone. However, he is surprised by his sister. Unlike wanting to know why she's here, he ignores her and leaves. The girl insists on talking to him, so Mujeom asks why she wants it so much. She says that after gracing him with her presence, he can't ignore her. She thought a lot before coming here to talk to him. However, frustrated, the prince doesn't want to know anything else. She loses patience and goes straight to the point. She shows her arm and says she got hurt. The reason for this is that last night, while training, she was ambushed. She doesn't know who did it because they were masked. This really worried her. Mujeom asserts that this happened because she was careless. Irritated, the sister says that's not how it happened. The girl explains that the academy informed the group leaders in advance against which team they would fight, as they expect the other team teams to attack the leaders of rival groups. Without the leader to command the team, the group has no chance of winning. After talking, the girl gets impatient and says she doesn't want to hear that one of the heirs was expelled before taking the second test, so he must be more careful. The girl leaves, and Mujium says it's strange. The weakest among the princes warns him. However, behind him, something was hiding in the trees, someone thirsty for blood. Hours had passed. It was already late when Cheon Yeo-woon finished his simulated battles hidden in the forest. After thinking about his progress, he decided to return to the dormitory, but on the way, he noticed something strange. The sound of a fight near where he is. When he's sure of the direction, he goes to check. It didn't take long for him to find a person lying on the ground and Prince Mujium in combat with the ninja. The blade already had blood from its victim. In combat, the Spring Clan Prince was struggling to stay alive against the blade attack. He twisted his leg in combat. The situation, which was already critical, was now inevitable. The last attack would be fatal. However, Cheon Yeo-woon goes to him and forces the ninja to defend himself. Cheon Yeo-woon manages to hit his stomach by a hair. Now that he's been discovered and the opponent is strong, the ninja fled. Cheon Yeo-woon asks if the prince didn't die.
I don't feel so good.
After some time, they return to their dormitory. He even carried the wounded. His new servant asks if his master is okay. He says yes, he's not hurt, just tired. One of the cadets says the prince is bleeding a lot, and that's dangerous. After a while, one of the instructors goes to the dormitory to help. Worried, the instructor says there's a problem. The Spring Prince won't be able to walk normally for some time. That's the worst possible thing. How will the group be able to fight without its leader? The instructor faints Mujium and says he will take him to the infirmary. The protagonist, worried, remembers that there is another injured person, but the instructor ignores him. Still, Cheon Yeo-woon carries the other wounded, saying that Cadet 4 is also in trouble. The instructor asserts that Cheon Yeo-woon did very well. He purposely left one behind so that someone would come after him alone. The instructor says that from now on he can take both, and then warns him not to go out tonight, as it's dangerous. The test is tomorrow. He also says that he must learn to fight with what he has. With that, the protagonist understands that his team is understaffed, but that's part of the test. Surely this also happened to the other groups. Thinking about it, he sees ants on the ground and how they fight in groups, attacking the leaders of other colonies. Now, everything makes sense in his mind. In the demonic celestial cult, one should not be bound by rules. Returning to the dormitory, the students are panicked because losing their leader means it's over for them. They'll all be expelled. Cheon Yeo-woon says they must think about electing a new leader and come up with a plan. Before he could say anything else, Yeo-bang suggests that his master be the new leader of the group. He argues to everyone that this is the only solution. If he was powerful enough to defeat Prince Mujium, he's the best choice. Timidly, everyone raises their hand and agrees that this is the only alternative. So, they all agreed Cheon Yeo-woon, who was despised until today, will lead Group 8. Important decisions were made that night. However, precisely at midnight, the protagonist awakened and, using the nano machines for night vision, he went to the dormitory of Team 7. Upon confirming that everyone was asleep, he stealthily struck the energy points of all the cadets. The last one he struck with excessive force. With everyone unconscious, he now used muscle acupuncture and sealed all their meridians. This way, they wouldn't be able to use Nigung energy. The protagonist whispered to them not to hold resentment. It wasn't personal. Before leaving the team's dormitory, he realized that one person was missing, so perhaps it was from here that the suspicious person who attacked the Spring Clan Prince came. The next day, the new leader of Team 8, Cheon Yeo-woon, went to participate in the drawing for the test. The Guardian, upon noticing this change, was pleased. To him, it meant that the cadets understood the true meaning of this test. After everyone was ready, he told them to show worthy victories and that he was looking forward to seeing them. As they returned to their positions, the protagonist noticed that that person had a familiar look. Those eyes he had seen before. He asked the nano to analyze his body structure, and after a few seconds, she confirmed that it was 100% compatible with the person from that night. Officially, the team duels for the second academy test would begin. In the first round, Team 1 would face Team 3. The Guardian shouted for them to be ready, and then the troops engaged in combat. Team 1, led by the Dark Clan Prince, gave a flawless performance, using a diagonal formation. With the prince's leadership, they were winning the battle. In the end, the members of Team 3 were completely subdued. The leader of Team 3 surrendered. The Guardian admitted that it's not like he was weak, but against that person, he wouldn't stand a chance. In the second round of the day, Team 4 faced Team 2, and Team 4 emerged victorious. The third clash would be the duel of our protagonist's team. His soldiers were afraid and lacked confidence in the training they had received. The protagonist looked at them and said that if they were nervous, it was normal. He was too, but if they didn't win today, they would be expelled from the academy. Their future depended on it, so they should have anger, not fear, courage, and determination to improve their future. Motivated by these words, his team was now completely focused. How he encouraged the cadets caught the Guardian's attention. Those eyes weren't those of a loser. His opponent would be Team 5, led by the daughter of the Sound clan. She was frustrated because she wanted to have a match against the Spring clan prince. But the idiot lost his position, and now she'll have to face this bastard. The princess ordered everyone to attack. The protagonist then ordered them to wait. She formed an arrowhead formation, and Cheon-Yeo organized the formation in layers. The Guardian, observing the combat and the team's decisions, said that this defensive form only makes sense if the front leader is strong. When their princes entered combat and exchanged the first blow, the princess was surprised as the powerless boy defended against her attack. She was extremely powerful, and everyone believed the protagonist was weak, so his defense drew everyone's attention. The protagonist knew he didn't have as much energy as she did, but he smiled in this situation. He managed to defend against all her blows, so, one by one, she wouldn't be able to win. The protagonist ordered them to change position. The formation he ordered, she thought would be foolish for them to make. She said he was a terrible leader, as she expected. The protagonist prepared a line formation, so she would force the destruction of these lines with a spear formation. When they were face to face, he changed the formation to a pincer formation. The girl quickly ordered them to defend against this attack, but before it was completed, the protagonist now ordered them to change to the arrow formation position. She couldn't predict any of the moves he made, so after the movements, they were face to face, but all her troops were cornered. The number of positions he shouted were just tricks. Hearing the positions, she thought she knew what would happen, but in fact, it was a bait. When the order was given to attack, everyone was afraid. The soldiers, in fear, dropped their weapons and gave up. The girls shouted that they were fools for dropping their weapons. The feeling of defeat took over her body, and memories began to flood her mind. She had a feeling that everyone would laugh at her for failing, and it would be against the worst of all. She couldn't accept that, and then flew into a rage. She advanced alone against the leader of Team 8. The protagonist dropped his shield for a sword battle. The girl sustained injuries, as did he, but her skill was surpassed by the brother she hates. Cheon-Yeo-woon executed the butterfly strike and defeated his sister. To the absolute surprise of everyone present, even the Guardian, the result was unexpected. The girl only saw that her arm was no longer attached to her body. The protagonist was superior. As she understood the result of the battle and what happened, the pain reached her, and along with it, a feeling of terror. The screams spread throughout the school. The instructors went to help the defeated while the victorious one observed on the blade. This is his first revenge, and as expected, it is stained with red. Furthermore, he was apprehensive because he executed the movement perfectly as he learned, but his movement wasn't as complete as he expected, so there is a limit even when you already know the moves. Team 8 was declared the winner. The Great Guardian, realizing that this was the butterfly blade technique, was pleased and surprised, wondering how that drunkard managed to teach that to this boy. He thinks that in these last 21 days he has grown in every aspect. He used a high-level technique and managed to cut the princess's arm. It's as if he were a genius sent from the heavens. The Guardian should have insisted on making him his disciple that time. Now the glory of teaching this person will fall upon his drunken rival. From now on, the boy will conquer the heavens. The next fight would be held by Team 7. Its members were not well. The group's leader was angry because the fight he had with the protagonist before hurt him. And somehow, he found out who sabotaged his team and was now looking at him mockingly because he was deceived. In combat, Team 7 wouldn't stand a chance, as all the members had their meridian flow blocked. Defeat was certain. However, the group leader organized the arrowhead formation, and the rival team leader was surprised. The attack was so fierce that it ripped the darkness from his hands and pierced his chest. The scene was frightening, but it motivated his team, which was weak. Even with their energy flows blocked, they could rely on their physical strength and attack. In the end, even though they were without energy, they managed to defeat all the members of the rival team and emerged victorious, an achievement based on strength and hatred. Then the leader of Team 7 tells our protagonist that he will be next. And indeed, this went beyond what he expected, so Cheon-Yeo-woon says this guy is annoying. The battle between Teams 7 and 6, Team 7 emerged victorious. All the battles were conducted, so in the director's room, they were analyzing the results. He receives a list of all those who failed in detail. They discussed that because the battles are in groups, if the members of the main families who lost feel offended, they trained their representatives and were hindered by the the lack of skill of other weak families. Regarding this, the Great Guardian says it's a pity, but they still grew their families well, and nothing can be done. Now, the winners must be taken to the library and receive their medicinal sphere. Everyone was eager to have access to the great knowledge library. The protagonist himself never thought he would set foot in this place, the library that contains books on all martial arts techniques in the cult. The cadets had already accessed the first floor while he was in the infirmary. Today, everyone would have access to the second floor, but the protagonist would have to visit the first and second floors at the same time. He remembers his master telling him not to waste his time in the library and focus only on mastering the butterfly technique. Furthermore, the butterfly technique he is learning is found on the 4th and 5th floors of the library, but he is learning it earlier thanks to his master. Since he wouldn't have time, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the benefits of the 1st and 2nd floors, but he shouldn't feel sad about it. His master tried to comfort him, but the protagonist was actually confident. No one knows he has an unimaginable secret. It was the first time he saw so many books together, and he could only stay in the library for 2 hours, so he would have to make the most of his time. As he flipped through the pages of the books, he asked the nano to analyze everything that was written. In 1 hour, he managed to scan a total of 55 books. Walking further into the library, he reached a place where a guard was sleeping next to a monolith. Was this a tomb? The guard responds that this is a tomb left by the ancestral celestial demon founder. This answer caught our protagonist's attention. The man tells him that this was carved in sapphire, which is an almost indestructible stone, but when he looks more closely, Cheon Yeo-woon discovers that this was carved with fingers. The guard comments that people are so focused on the books that they never noticed that this was here and showed no curiosity. He protected this place for over 20 years, and no one ever paid attention to this grave. This includes all the descendants of the celestial family. Looking at the back of this monolith, the protagonist notices something strange. There are blade marks carved into the stone. He asks the nano to analyze these cuts, and after a complete analysis, she discovers traces of a sword blade intertwined. These marks were made by 2 different weapons, by 2 different people. But why would this be here like this? He uses an augmented reality of the nano machine and realizes that there is a difference between the marks. It was as if the second person had done it later and tried to hide the original first marks. Anxiously, the protagonist wonders if he could use the nano to separate the original marks from the marks that were made later. After a complete analysis and using a simulation, he is surprised. Yes, it is possible to separate the sword strikes. These marks are not normal. It is a sword movement with formations unknown to everything the nano knows. Just by looking, he couldn't tell what kind of movement this was, so he asks nano to analyze the movements of the marks and replicate them in an augmented reality simulation. It is possible, but first, they have to check the sapphire's resistance to measure the user's strength. At that moment, the guard questions why he isn't going to read books. He's wasting time here. The protagonist then asks if he saw the marks behind as well. He says yes and finds it very sad. Rumors say that the ancestor left the sword technique of his epiphany here. Whoever did this on top to desecrate is a coward. Cheon Yeo wonders if maybe they did this to try to get the ancestor's epiphany. In other words, there is doubt whether this was just vandalism or has a meaning behind it. Finally, the guard lets the student do as he pleases. He won't interfere. Nano informs that the stone's resistance can be measured by putting his hand on the stone. As he begins the analysis, Nano compares the stone's resistance to diamond. Diamond's resistance is 10, and this sapphire is equal to 7. This is extremely resilient, so the protagonist wonders who would be capable of making these marks on the stone using their fingers. Using augmented reality, Nano simulates a dummy in Cheon Yeo-woon's vision. The martial artist prepares and executes the strikes that would leave these marks. Seeing this leaves him astonished. All the marks were left with just one continuous movement of the same technique. The butterfly technique he previously learned from his master, even when mastered, doesn't compare to this. Then, he quickly asks her to transfer the knowledge of these movements to his brain. Now, thinking about it, he doesn't even know who this person is, but he has just received the best gift that could exist. Through this stone, he gained knowledge of incomparable movements. But before leaving, he hadn't thought about the other technique that was on the stone. Curious about this, he asks Nano to simulate the movements of the other person now. When these movements are executed, they are even more devastating. The protagonist was shocked by this information, and he asked Nano to simulate the battle between these two people, technique against technique. After she does this, the holograms engage in combat. The simulation was incredible, and in the end, the first movement that he thought was perfect was nullified in an incomparable way. If he thought that the first person was a genius and the pinnacle of the world, the second person surpassed them. After that, the protagonist went to ask the instructor if there are other tombs like this on other floors of the library. He only worked here his whole life and didn't see the other floors, but he heard that there are others on each floor. On the second floor of the academy library, students were poring over books trying to learn as much as they could. Everyone was focused on reading techniques of new movements and breaths. Among the people, the protagonist noticed that his sword clan brother was also there studying. Of all the heirs, he was the only one interested. None of them came to the library because they thought the content of this place was insignificant. He put that aside and went to get what he was most interested in. The monolith was also on the second floor of the library, and as he thought, there were also engraved marks on the stone behind it. Nano makes the same analysis as she did on the first floor. The techniques recorded in the stone are incredible. The first mark was made with 24 formations of movements from a single technique. The second mark was made with 56 sword movements from a single technique to nullify the first. Nano copied these movements to his armament. The protagonist wanted to test these movements here right away, but there were many people around, so he would have to restrain his eagerness. The other people in the library were annoyed by someone flipping through books quickly and making a lot of noise. By doing this, they were sure that the person wasn't valuing the content, just flipping through the pages very quickly. This bothered everyone around. The protagonist didn't care. With the nano machine, he could analyze all the books in seconds. He caught everyone's attention, including his brothers. Cheonyu was curious about what he was doing too. For him, it was also clear that his brother didn't know what he was doing, but it was still curious to see him flipping through the books non-stop. During this time, the protagonist scanned a total of 156 books. After doing this, he asked to analyze all the books that saved the data and weight in his program. Something he realized now is that, no matter how powerful the technique is, for example, the butterfly technique that is among the top 10 martial arts of the cult, it requires experience practicing it thousands of times to achieve mastery. So, he is eager to gain experience in real combat to train. When her shift ends, the protagonist informs that he is leaving. The instructor then informs that someone asked about the time the protagonist would leave the library. So, there is someone waiting for him, but he doesn't pay attention to it. To his surprise, maybe that person just appeared in front of him. He wants to know why someone invaded his dormitory and sabotaged his comrades. With deadly hatred, he wants to confirm if it was him and get an explanation about it. But Cheon Hyo-woon says he is too busy now, and also questions why he left his subordinates alone. It was clear that someone stronger would appear. The boy ignores this provocation and says that now he is there to do the same to him. The protagonist realizes that, unlike a certain someone, he doesn't react to provocations. They were going to fight each other, but before this fight started, someone was behind observing, and when the two were ready to start, his sword clan brother stood between them. This leaves both of them irritated and surprised by this move. His name is Cheon Yu-chan from the Blade clan. He approaches friendly, saying they were very focused and then didn't notice his presence. He's interrupting this fight because he really needs to talk to his younger brother, so he needs to set aside this skirmish for later. He was being polite, however, this was humiliating, and the boy doesn't give up. He must wait for his brother to be beaten first. His matter is more important. Yu-chan says he tried to be polite and it didn't work out, so now he doesn't know what to do to make him obey. The leader of Team 8 becomes furious and tries to attack the prince of the Sword Clan and misses. With just his hands, he is completely nullified, and his life could have been taken with a simple hand movement. In this humiliating way, he questions if the boy is already convinced that he should leave. The protagonist is surprised at how the skills he saw now don't compare to the prince of the Spring Clan and the Armless Princess. They are more advanced. This person didn't even stand a chance against the prince. Yu-chan asks if he has any injuries, perhaps a broken rib, as his movements are limited. The cadet from Team 8 confirms that this prince is on another level from anyone else. He has no chance against him now. He got the message. The prince warns that he can leave now. Humiliated, he simply walks away. When they finally are alone, his brother talks about his true objective. He's there to talk to his brother and not to fight. The protagonist enters combat mode, and Yu-chan stops him and tells him to wait. He's not there to fight. This is the first encounter between the brothers, so he greets politely and says it's a pleasure to meet him. Being called brother is the first time. This is not how they've been acting for years. This kind of attitude leaves him filled with hatred. It's clearly mocking, and the brother acknowledges that him being irritated is quite normal, as he's been rejected by all the clans since then. The protagonist, now furious, asks if he expects him to be nice to him because he was polite. Yu-chan then gets straight to the point. He realized that both of them are on the path of the sword and saw how he used his skill against the sister from the Sound clan. Yu-chan became a passionate fan of his. These affectionate words irritate the protagonist, and he asks him to state his intentions quickly. There's no tension between them, so Yu-chan decides there's no other way and states his goal. He wants him to work for the Blade clan. The protagonist, of course, is surprised to hear this, perhaps irritated. He asks if his brother is serious. His brother responds affirmatively, saying he doesn't know about the other brothers, but he's sure the protagonist shouldn't be his enemy. Our hero questions if what he's asking is for Cheon Yo-woon to give up being the heir. Yu-chan smiles and says that implies this situation, but anyway, it's not as if he has a chance, so serving the future heir of the cult would be the best option for him. Besides, the older brother has become a passionate fan of the sword techniques of his sixth brother and would provide him with many benefits. His brother didn't expect him to refuse, as it should be obvious he had no chance. However, his sixth brother was saying he would never give up his path, and anyone who got in his way would be defeated. This means that the conflict between them will only be resolved on the battlefield. The older brother is filled with hatred because his brother is insinuating that he has a chance against him, which is obvious to everyone that he doesn't. The protagonist noticed the buildup of energy in his hand. Surely, his brother was planning to attack. When he noticed the micro movements in his fingers, he prepared to defend. This accelerated reaction caught his brother's attention, who began to laugh incessantly. He said that's how it is, there's nothing to be done. They will meet again on the battlefield. Although he tears through the air to demonstrate his ability, it's just physical manifestation. Blade energy is a type of skill he will never be able to achieve. This made him aware of the difference in powers between them. This line divides the power of a genius and a failure. So, now that he has shown the difference, he said he'll leave and says he's looking forward to their meeting on the battlefield. The protagonist thought he was on the same level as his brothers since he defeated the Spring clan, but when he realized that, he was naive. The difference between the other brothers is still like heaven and earth. As he walked back to his dormitory, the brother from the Blade clan was thoughtful. In that second, he intended to cut off his sixth brother's arm and leave him useless. But contrary to all expectations, he managed to anticipate his intention. With that, he is certain if he is his brother, it's not normal. That same night, the protagonist heads to the individual training room of the academy. Here, normal students can train in isolation. It's quite large, so there's not much to do, but at least here, he won't be bothered and will be able to see all the simulations from the nano machine. She projects the dummies that will perform the movements of the techniques he saw in the library. This simulation of the technique from the second floor, which he hadn't put into practice yet, is even more incredible than on the first floor, so the movements that nullify the first movement are even more monstrous. It's so insane that he shudders. He thinks only a madman could train his whole life to master these movements. He does dozens of simulations and dozens of fights between the dummies. He simulates the butterfly sword technique against the techniques from the monolith. Doing this mental simulation of the movements made his internal energy increase tremendously. Feeling this result, he lost focus on mental training. His Nigong was much more powerful. His internal energy increased by 10 years in cultivation. With this new margin of energy, he feels that now he is capable of performing this new technique. When he consumes the medicinal ball, which was the prize from the second test, he will be able to increase his internal energy by another 20 years. Since he has little time to train, he decides to train and increase his energy. With this, he has the nano transfer knowledge of these movements to his brain, so he has the knowledge without being able to increase his energy. However, this process will take 10 hours to complete. Now he returns to his dormitory. Things are normal there. The first person he greets is his most faithful servant, the bald one. He notices that his hands hold some sheets of paper. He's studying something he learned in the library. The most common thing to do is to try to write down everything he memorized in the 2 hours they had access to the library. Seeing that he's giving his all, he feels proud. The next day, he returns to the individual training room. He goes into hibernation mode, and after concluding the transformation of his body to adapt to the new techniques he transferred to his brain, one of the side effects is to dirty the floor of the room with last night's dinner. This is quite disgusting and tiresome. However, now he thinks about the benefits. The strength he can put into his hand is much greater than before. His whole body is more resistant, muscular. Look at how many muscles on his belly he gained. The next step is to test how strong he is now. He channels all his strength to strike the wall, focusing on his breathing. He prepares to attack in the room next door. Someone was calmly cultivating, just like him, their energy red, perhaps representing anger. This anger at being humiliated the day before. Before he seeks to compare himself to that prince, the boy needs to make sure to destroy the failed sixth prince. While he was focused, he didn't realize that the wall next to him had turned into an ass.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Leave a like if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. See you in the next video. Bye for now.